Shadows at the edge. The void between stars seemed to stretch forever outside the reinforced viewports of Helios 9. The research outpost hung like a delicate silver pendant against the backdrop of the massive nebula they'd been studying for the past 3 years. Dr. Ilara Chen stood at the main observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling cosmic gases that painted the station's surroundings in brilliant purples and blues. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The voice belonged to Tenzin, her chief astrophysicist. "Hard to believe there's anything dangerous out there when you look at something that gorgeous." Ilara nodded, her expression guarded. Beauty and danger often come hand in hand, especially out here. Helios 9 was humanity's furthest outpost from Earth, established primarily for scientific research, but also serving as a quiet forward listening post. The station housed 32 researchers and support staff, tucked away in a sector of space that the newly encountered galactic community considered worthless, too far from established hyperspace routes, too sparse in easily accessible resources, perfect for humans who wanted to quietly observe their galactic neighbors while conducting legitimate research. Director Chen, the station's AI announced through the overhead speakers, "We've detected an anomalous signal originating from the nebula's core region. Analysis suggests artificial origin." Ilara's posture straightened immediately. "Details, Araya. The signal appears to be a repeating mathematical sequence, not matching any known communication protocols in our database. First contact protocol, Araya. Alert the crew but maintain passive observation only." Within hours, the entire station was in controlled excitement. This far from Earth, they had broad autonomy, but first contact scenarios were rigorously planned. Ilara gathered her senior staff in the command center. Tenzin Norbu, Dr. Maya Santos, the exobiologist, Dr. Heinrich Weber, the linguistics specialist, Security Chief Aiden Kovic, and Chief Engineer Priya Lakshmi. "We've been monitoring the signal for 3 hours now," Ilara told them. "Heinrich, what do we know?" The linguist's eyes gleamed with excitement. "It's definitely a communication attempt. The mathematical pattern establishes intelligence, but the secondary layers contain what appear to be simplified pictograms. They're inviting a response." Maya leaned forward. "The Galactic Conclave protocols strictly forbid unilateral first contact by lesser species." Aiden snorted. "Lesser species. 7 different alien civilizations make first contact with Earth in the same decade. Act all superior because they've been spacefaring longer, form their little club, and suddenly we're supposed to run to them for permission before we say hello to anyone new. Those are the terms of our probationary membership," Ilara reminded him, though she privately agreed with his sentiment. "But we're also authorized to respond if we believe there's imminent scientific necessity. If there's intelligence inside that nebula that we haven't detected despite 3 years of observation, I'd call that scientific necessity," Priya offered. Ilara made her decision. "Heinrich, prepare a response. Basic mathematical acknowledgement, then the standard first contact package. Araya, send a burst transmission to Earth Central with all our data so far. We're at least 8 days from any possible reinforcement, so let's be cautious but not miss this opportunity." The response came faster than anyone expected, less than an hour after their transmission. The view screens in the command center lit up with the image of a being unlike any species humanity had encountered before. Its body appeared almost crystalline, with geometric patterns that shifted and refracted light. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled momentarily before producing stilted English. "Greetings, human outpost. I am Nexus Guide Zurval of the Voidborn Ascendancy. Your presence near our emergence point is unexpected." Ilara stepped forward. "I am Director Ilara Chen of the Earth Science Directorate. We've been studying the nebula's stellar formation patterns for several years. We had no indication of intelligent life within the nebula itself. The crystalline being's patterns shifted in what might have been amusement. The veils of cosmic dust serve us well. We have observed your kind from afar. The newest among the Starwalkers, yet so eager to reach beyond your grasp. Something in the creature's tone set off warning bells in Ilara's mind. We seek only knowledge and peaceful exchange, as do all species, initially. The being's translated voice took on a harder edge. You should have heeded the Conclave's restrictions, little humans. This sector was marked prohibited for a reason. Aiden stepped closer to Ilara. No Conclave charts show this sector as restricted, he said quietly. Contact the Conclave representative, Ilara whispered to Maya, then addressed the alien again. We have no record of any restrictions in this region. If we've inadvertently trespassed, we apologize. The crystalline patterns of the being darkened. The Conclave has kept many secrets from your kind, Director Chen. They fear what humans might become if given true freedom among the stars. They convinced us to wait, to observe. We have observed enough. The transmission abruptly terminated. Seconds later, the station's proximity alarms shrieked to life. Multiple objects emerging from the nebula. Aiden shouted, rushing to the security console. Battle stations. We're a research station, Priya reminded him frantically. We barely have defensive screens. On the main view screen, they watched in horror as vessels emerged from the nebula. Dozens of them, their hulls sharing the same crystalline properties as the being they'd spoken with. They moved with impossible grace, surrounding the station in a perfect geometric formation. Emergency transmission to Earth Central and a Conclave outpost in the Proxima system, Ilara ordered, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Send everything we have. The Voidborn vessels are generating some kind of interference field. Araya responded. Long-range communications are degraded. I estimate only 30% probability of transmission receipt. The alien ships drew closer, strange energies building along their crystalline edges. They're powering weapons, Aiden confirmed grimly. Ilara opened a channel. Voidborn vessels, we are a civilian scientific outpost. Please state your intentions. The response came as a blinding beam of energy that struck the station's shields, immediately dropping them to critical levels. Director, we're receiving a transmission from the Conclave outpost in Proxima. Maya called out. The face of Ambassador Threlka, a blue-skinned Arcadian with 4 eyes, appeared on a secondary screen. Human outpost, what have you done? The Voidborn were contained. Contained. We had no warning. Ilara shouted as another blast rocked the station. We need immediate assistance. The Arcadian's upper eyes blinked rapidly in what Ilara had learned was a sign of distress. The Conclave cannot intervene directly against the Voidborn. It would violate the ancient accords. They're attacking an unarmed research station. We warned your government to avoid that sector. It was implied in subsection 7 of the membership protocols. Priya scrambled to reroute power to the failing shields while Aiden tried to organize an evacuation to the station's limited escape pods. Ambassador, Ilara said through gritted teeth, if you won't help us, at least relay our distress call to Earth Central. The Voidborn are jamming conventional transmissions, the Arcadian replied. And human military vessels would take too long to arrive. I regret what will happen to your outpost. Director Chen. The Conclave will officially protest this violation by the Voidborn, of course. The ambassador's face disappeared from the screen as the connection was cut. Another hit from the Voidborn ships sent a power conduit exploding across the command center, injuring 2 technicians. Those bureaucratic cowards. Aiden spat, helping a wounded colleague to safety. Initiate Protocol Omega, Ilara commanded, her face illuminated by the emergency lighting. Encrypt all research data and transmit continuously on all available channels. Implementing Protocol Omega, the AI confirmed. Director, I recommend immediate evacuation. Hull integrity at 62% and declining. The next hour passed in a blur of emergency procedures, the crew fighting desperately to save both the station and themselves. The crystalline ships continued their methodical attack, targeting communications arrays and propulsion systems first, then gradually destroying the station's ability to function. As Ilara helped the last group of personnel toward the escape pods, Tenzin rushed towards her, tablet in hand. Ilara, the signals we're getting from those ships, they're not just weapons. They're scanning us, downloading every piece of data we have. This isn't just an attack, it's information extraction. Another explosion rocked the corridor, sending them both sprawling. Ilara pulled herself up, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. We need to purge the databases. Too late, Tenzin coughed, the smoke growing thicker. They've already got most of it, but that's not all. I've analyzed their attack pattern. They're being careful not to destroy us completely. I think they want survivors. Prisoners. Ilara's blood ran cold. Araya, override on the final escape pods. Lock in Earth coordinates and initiate Black Box protocol. Director Ed would expend all remaining power. Station support systems will fail completely. Do it. Make sure at least one pod gets through. As they reached the final evacuation point, Aiden was organizing the last of the crew into the remaining pods. 2 left, capacity for 8 each, he reported tersely. Everyone else is away. Or dead, he confirmed grimly. 12 confirmed casualties. Ilara felt each death like a physical blow, but there was no time for grief. The last pod goes on full automatic maximum acceleration. AI has programmed it to evade pursuit and get the message home. What message? Ilara handed him a small data crystal. Everything we know about the Voidborn, plus this. The Conclave knew about them. Deliberately kept us in the dark. Let us settle in their territory without warning. Another blast hit the station, closer this time. The artificial gravity flickered. 3 minutes to complete station failure, Araya announced calmly. Get those people on board, Ilara ordered, helping an injured technician into the pod. When only Ilara, Aiden, and Tenzin remained, Aiden looked at the single pod remaining. That's not going to outrun those ships. No, Ilara agreed, but it might survive long enough. Understanding dawned in Tenzin's eyes. You're staying to distract them. I'm station director. My responsibility. Not alone, Aiden said firmly, checking his sidearm. Standard issue, barely able to dent station bulkheads, let alone alien warships. But it was something. Both of you, go, Ilara insisted. Tenzin shook his head. 3 can buy more time than 1. A proximity alarm wailed. Director, Voidborn vessels are attempting to dock at Airlock 7, Araya reported. There was no more time to argue. Ilara nodded sharply. Tenzin, go with the last group. Make sure they understand what happened here. Make sure Earth knows about the Conclave's betrayal. The astrophysicist wanted to protest, but recognized the steel in her voice. With a final nod to his colleagues, he ducked into the escape pod. The hatch sealed behind him. Ilara and Aiden raced back toward the command center, even as they felt the vibration of alien ships forcing their way into the dying station. Araya. How long until the automated pod launches? 90 seconds. Director. Warning. Voidborn entities have breached the hull. Aiden took up position at the command center entrance. We just need to hold them off long enough for that pod to get clear. Ilara worked frantically at the main console, initiating a series of system overloads that would hopefully cause enough confusion to cover the pod's escape. On the security feeds, she could see them. Voidborn warriors, their crystalline bodies flowing through the station corridors like living glass. They move like nothing I've ever seen, Aiden whispered, raising his weapon. The final minute stretched into eternity. Ilara's fingers flew across the console, setting up one last desperate measure. Araya. On my mark. Vent all atmosphere from sections 3 through 12. That will cause catastrophic damage to remaining station infrastructure. That's the idea. Mark. The station shuddered as emergency bulkheads slammed down and massive sections were suddenly exposed to vacuum. On the monitors, several Voidborn warriors were caught in the explosive decompression, their crystalline forms tumbling into space. Automated pod has launched, Araya announced. Tracking. It has cleared immediate detection range. A bitter smile crossed Ilara's face. Then we've done what we can. The command center doors buckled under some immense pressure. Aiden raised his weapon as the metal twisted and tore. The first Voidborn warrior stepped through the breach, its crystalline body refracting the emergency lighting into deadly rainbows. For Earth, Aiden said quietly, opening fire. As the battle for the command center began, elsewhere in the darkness of space, a single escape pod accelerated away from the doomed station, carrying with it humanity's first warning about both the Voidborn threat and the Conclave's deception. What nobody yet realized, not the desperate defenders of Helios 9, not the conquering Voidborn, and certainly not the complacent Conclave, was that this small pod would trigger events that would reshape the power dynamics of the entire galaxy. Because contrary to what the Conclave believed, Earth was not defenseless, it was not primitive, and it had never ever abandoned its own. Reckoning. 8 days after the fall of Helios 9, the Arcadian ambassador Threlka stood before the Conclave Emergency Council, his 4 eyes downcast as he delivered his report. The human outpost has been completely overrun. The Voidborn now control that sector entirely. Our monitoring stations indicate they're establishing a permanent presence in the nebula. First Speaker Grelf, a towering insectoid whose carapace bore the ceremonial marks of 5 centuries of diplomatic service, clicked his mandibles in irritation. And the humans. Their central government has been informed of the unfortunate loss of their research station. We've expressed our deepest regrets, of course, and offered the standard reparation package for Level 3 civilizations. Moltaren, the reptilian representative of the Draconis Combine, leaned forward. And their response? Curiously muted, Threlka admitted. They've requested all information we have on the Voidborn, and formally protested that they were not properly warned about the dangers in that sector. The warnings were implied in their membership documentation. First Speaker Grelf dismissed. If they cannot properly interpret diplomatic language, that is hardly our concern. Nevertheless, Threlka continued, they have formally requested permission to send a recovery and investigation team to the site of their lost outpost. A ripple of amusement passed through the council chamber. With what? Scoffed Moltaren. Their primitive warships would be detected and destroyed by the Voidborn long before they reached the nebula. The humans barely have interstellar capability. Their ships are slow, their weapons are crude, and their understanding of galactic politics is childishly simplistic. We should offer them additional protection, suggested Lumva, the gaseous entity representing the Unified Cloud Collective. After all, we did allow them to establish an outpost in a dangerous region. The protection agreement in their membership terms is already generous, First Speaker Grelf countered. We cannot commit additional resources simply because they ignored warnings. The humans will adapt, as all young species must. Perhaps this incident will teach them to rely more heavily on Conclave guidance. The discussion continued in this vein, with various representatives debating how best to manage the humans' reaction while minimizing Conclave involvement. None of them paid attention to the subtle alert that appeared on Threlka's communication device, indicating that unusual activity had been detected at the edge of the system. It wasn't until a breathless aide burst into the council chamber that the proceedings ground to a halt. Honored representatives, the aide gasped. Unknown vessels have entered the system. Hundreds of them. First Speaker Grelf rose to his full height. Voidborn. No, Eminence. Their configuration matches no known design in our database. The massive view screen at the front of the chamber activated, showing the space around their station. What they saw defied all their expectations. Ships. Hundreds of ships of various sizes and configurations, but all sharing the sleek, predatory aesthetic that was undeniably of unified origin. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with a dark metallic luster that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of the system's star. Identify them immediately, Grelf demanded. The communications officer's voice came through, shaking slightly. They're broadcasting an identification signal now. It's human. A stunned silence fell over the council chamber. Impossible, Molteran finally said. The humans have no such fleet. Our intelligence is quite clear on their military capabilities. We are being hailed, the communications officer announced. First Speaker Grelf straightened his ceremonial robes. On screen, the view screen shifted to show the bridge of what was clearly the command vessel. At its center stood a dark-skinned human woman with close-cropped silver hair and eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. Her uniform was simple but immaculate, with minimal insignia, just a stylized Earth emblem on her collar and 3 small stars on each shoulder. "This is Fleet Admiral Amara Kamau of the Earth Expeditionary Fleet," she announced without preamble. "I am here to retrieve our people from Helios 9. You will provide all information you have on the Voidborn immediately. This is not a request." First Speaker Grelf attempted to regain his diplomatic composure. "Admiral Kamau, this is unexpected. The Conclave was not aware that Earth possessed such extensive space-going capabilities. There are many things the Conclave is apparently unaware of," the Admiral replied coldly, "including, it seems, the importance of warning allies about known threats. My fleet will depart for the Helios Nebula in 30 minutes. Any attempt to impede us will be considered an act of war." Molteran surged to his feet. "You dare threaten the Conclave? Your species is barely out of its gravity well. You have no standing to make demands." Admiral Kamau's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order." She glanced off-screen. "Tactical, target the abandoned monitoring station at the 7th Lagrange point. Single shot, minimum yield." Before any of the Conclave representatives could respond, a beam of concentrated energy lanced out from one of the smaller human vessels. The monitoring station, a hardened military observation post that the humans shouldn't even have known existed, simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. That was 0.01% power. Admiral Kamau stated calmly, "We detected your hidden observation posts the moment we entered this system, just as we've been aware of your surveillance of Earth for the past 70 years. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Amid the shouting and accusations, Ambassador Threlka studied the human fleet with growing dread. The ships were not new. They showed signs of extensive use and repair. This was not a recently constructed force. This was a long-established armada that had somehow remained completely hidden from Conclave intelligence." First Speaker Grelf finally managed to restore order. "Admiral Kamau, surely we can discuss this matter civilly. The Conclave regrets any misunderstanding regarding the Helios Nebula situation." "Save your diplomatic equivocation," the Admiral cut him off. "We intercepted Ambassador Threlka's transmission to Helios 9 during the attack. We know the Conclave was aware of the Voidborn presence. We know you deliberately withheld that information from Earth when you approved our research outpost in that sector." Threlka's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. Those communications had been encrypted with the Conclave's most sophisticated protocols. As if reading his thoughts, Admiral Kamau continued, "Your encryption was broken before your ships even reached our solar system, Ambassador. We've been reading your secure communications since first contact." A new figure stepped into view beside the Admiral, a human male with lined features and watchful eyes. "This is General Viktor Lazarev, Earth Intelligence Command." Admiral Kamau introduced him. "He has an interesting perspective on our first contact with the galactic community." The general spoke, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "When 7 different alien species coincidentally made contact with Earth within the same decade, we found it statistically improbable. When they all urged us to join the Conclave under nearly identical terms, offering technological trinkets while demanding access to our system, we became suspicious. When your cultural exchange representatives focused almost exclusively on our military history and capabilities, we understood the game." First Speaker Grelth's mandibles twitched in agitation. These accusations are baseless. Are they? General Lazarev raised an eyebrow. Your Confederacy has contacted 17 emerging spacefaring civilizations in the last millennium. In every case, you've guided their development along paths that ensure they remain technologically dependent on the Conclave. You classify them as Level 3 civilizations and restrict their military development through seemingly benevolent treaty obligations. The accuracy of this assessment sent another wave of shock through the council chamber. Admiral Kama took over again. What you fail to understand about humans is that we've never trusted authority that hasn't earned that trust. So while our official representatives smiled and signed your restrictive treaties, Earth quietly prepared for the possibility that our new allies might not have our best interests at heart. On the view screen behind the human leaders, tactical displays showed the Earth fleet breaking formation, with a significant portion accelerating away from the Conclave station. 3/4 of my fleet is now en route to Helios Nebula, the Admiral stated. The Voidborn will be dealt with. The remaining ships will stay here to ensure the Conclave does not interfere. Once our people are recovered, all of our people, we will discuss the future of humanity's relationship with your organization. First Speaker Grelth threw himself up to his full imposing height. Admiral, you misunderstand the Voidborn threat. They are not some minor power to be casually engaged. They are ancient and deadly. There is a reason the Conclave maintains a policy of containment rather than confrontation. We're counting on their deadliness, General Lazarev said quietly. It's been too long since the Earth Expeditionary Fleet had a proper field test. With that chilling statement, the transmission ended, leaving the Conclave representatives staring at the tactical display as the human vessels executed their maneuvers with precision that spoke of extensive combat experience. Experience that, according to all their intelligence, humans simply shouldn't have. 3 days later, the Conclave Council reconvened an emergency session, this time with observers from a dozen species not normally permitted in such high-level discussions. Word had spread quickly through the galactic community. Something unprecedented was happening. Ambassador Threlka stood before his peers, his usual diplomatic confidence shattered. The reports are confirmed. The human fleet engaged the Voidborn forces at the Helios Nebula approximately 30 standard hours ago. The battle. He paused, still struggling to process the information. The battle lasted less than 2 standard hours. The Voidborn fleet has been completely destroyed. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. That's not possible, Molterin insisted. The Voidborn have resisted Conclave containment efforts for millennia. Nevertheless, Threlka continued, our monitoring stations recorded the entire engagement. The human vessels employed weapons technologies we've never encountered before. They seemed specifically designed to counteract the Voidborn's crystalline physiology and defenses, as if they'd been preparing for this specific enemy. First Speaker Grelth observed quietly. More troubling still, Threlka went on, the humans have recovered survivors from their outpost. 43 personnel were rescued from Voidborn captivity, including the station director, Dr. Ilara Chen. This news caused even greater consternation among the representatives. The human fleet has established a permanent station at the nebula's edge. Threlka concluded. Admiral Kamau has informed us that Earth is claiming that entire sector under something they call the doctrine of dereliction, apparently a human legal principle that territory abandoned or mismanaged by one power can be rightfully claimed by another that puts it to proper use. First Speaker Grelth's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress, and what of the demands they made? They want a full conclave session, Threlka replied, with representatives from all member species present, including those usually excluded from policy discussions. They're demanding a complete restructuring of the relationship between the conclave and what they term emergent spacefaring civilizations. They can't dictate terms to the conclave, Molterin hissed. We have maintained galactic stability for millennia. Actually, came a voice from the chamber entrance. We can. All eyes turned to see Dr. Elara Chen walking into the council chamber, flanked by Admiral Kama and two human security officers. Chen's face bore new scars, and her left arm appeared to be a temporary prosthetic, but her eyes burned with purpose. Director Chen, First Speaker Grelf acknowledged stiffly. "We are pleased to see you survive the Voidborn attack." "No thanks to the Conclave," she replied coldly. "I spent 8 days in a Voidborn holding cell, watching my colleagues being dissected for scientific study. I heard them screaming as crystalline probes extracted information directly from their living brains. And all that time, I kept wondering, why would the esteemed Conclave allow its newest members to blunder into such danger without warning?" She walked forward until she stood directly before the first speaker's elevated platform. Then I remembered something my security chief said just before the attack. "No Conclave charts show this sector as restricted." He was right. But now we understand why. The Conclave has been using emerging civilizations like mine as unwitting scouts, sending us into dangerous regions to provoke responses from threats like the Voidborn, testing their capabilities and intentions without risking your own people. Admiral Kama stepped forward. "We've accessed the Conclave's secure archives. This isn't the first time you've sacrificed an expendable Level 3 civilization to gather intelligence on a threat. It is, however, the first time your sacrificial lambs came back with teeth." First Speaker Grelf looked from the humans to his fellow council members, seeing the growing uncertainty in their eyes. For thousands of years, the Conclave had maintained its position through carefully managed information and technological superiority. Both advantages had just been shattered. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "A new relationship," Admiral Kama stated firmly. "One based on genuine alliance rather than manipulation. Earth will not be classified, contained, or controlled. We will not surrender our right to self-defense or exploration, and we will not stand by while the Conclave sacrifices other emerging civilizations in the name of your version of stability. And if we refuse..." Admiral Kama's expression didn't change. "Then Earth will withdraw from the Conclave and form its own alliance. I suspect many of your current protectorates might find our terms more appealing than yours." The implication hung in the air. Earth could shatter the Conclave's millennia of carefully constructed influence within a generation. You would destabilize the entire galactic community over this misunderstanding. First Speaker Grelf asked incredulously. Dr. Chen stepped forward again. "There was no misunderstanding. You deliberately placed my people in harm's way, then abandoned us when we called for help. That was a choice, not a misunderstanding. The Conclave has always acted for the greater good." "Your greater good," Admiral Kamau interrupted. "Not ours, and certainly not that of the dozens of species you've kept technologically dependent on you for centuries." For the first time in anyone's memory, First Speaker Grelf seemed at a loss for words. The power dynamic that had defined the Conclave for thousands of years was crumbling before his eyes. "I move that we adjourn to consider the humans' proposal," Ambassador Threlka suggested diplomatically. "Perhaps after reflection, a compromise can be found that preserves the spirit of cooperation the Conclave was founded upon." Admiral Kama nodded slightly. "Earth's full proposal has been transmitted to all council members. We'll return in 3 standard days for your response." As the humans turned to leave, Molteran called out, "How did you do it? How did Earth conceal such military capability from the entire Conclave?" Admiral Kama paused at the doorway. "You all assumed that because we welcomed your representatives and participated in your cultural exchanges, we had shown you everything we had. That was your mistake. On Earth, we have a very old saying: trust, but verify. We trusted enough to engage with you, but verified your intentions by watching what you didn't say as closely as what you did." With those words, she departed, leaving the Conclave representatives to confront a new reality, one where humanity had emerged from nowhere to become perhaps the most significant military and political force in the sector. In the corridor outside, Dr. Chen fell into step beside Admiral Kama. Will they agree to our terms? They don't have much choice, the Admiral replied. They built their power on the illusion of superiority. Once that's shattered, they have to either adapt or collapse. And the Voidborn? Our science teams are already studying the data we recovered from both the battlefield and Helios 9. If there are more of them out there, we'll be ready. Chen nodded slowly, her thoughts turning to her colleagues who hadn't survived to see this day. You know, when I sent that final distress call, I never truly believed help would arrive in time. The Conclave had convinced us we were alone out here, that Earth was just taking its first tentative steps into the galactic community. Admiral Kamau's stern expression softened slightly. That's exactly what we wanted everyone to believe. For 100 years, Earth has been preparing, building ships in the asteroid belt, establishing hidden bases in distant star systems, developing technologies that didn't depend on Conclave standards. All because our first deep space probes detected evidence of conflicts the Conclave never mentioned in their welcome briefings. A century of preparation, Chen marveled, all while presenting the face of an eager, naive species just happy to be invited to the table. The best deception is one where your opponent convinces themselves of what they expect to see, the Admiral quoted. The Conclave saw what they wanted to see, another manageable, controllable young species. They never bothered to look deeper. As they boarded the shuttle that would take them back to the EEF flagship, Chen looked out at the stars. The same stars she'd studied all her life, now forever changed in her perception. What happens now? She asked. Admiral Kamau's gaze followed hers to the viewport. Now the real work begins. Earth steps out of the shadows and takes its place as a full and equal member of the galactic community. Not as a level 3 civilization to be patronized and manipulated, but as we truly are. And what are we, truly? Chen asked softly. The Admiral's lips curved in a subtle smile. What we've always been, Doctor, protectors, explorers, innovators. And now the rest of the galaxy knows it too. As the shuttle accelerated toward the waiting Earth fleet, the news was already spreading across subspace channels throughout Conclave territory and beyond. Humanity was not what anyone had believed them to be. They had concealed their true strength, waited patiently, and revealed themselves only when necessary to save their own people. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.